bit to questions about infrastructure. So I'm going to try to loop two questions into one. And the first question is, what are your senses of the major water infrastructure issues in the ward? And to bring another piece to that, how do you see some of these proposed and new developments either negatively or positively impacting infrastructure in the ward?
Just clarification, are you talking about the work around the Chicago Stack Canal?
Oh, well, so the question about water infrastructure is from your view, as alderman, what would be some of those water infrastructure issues that you would want to take on?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the biggest one, the one that we always think about, right, when we drink is how much lead is in our water, right? And why isn't it that, about 2 years ago, again, when the current alderman, as the head of the health committee, got the results of the lead in our water, and the city and the water department sat on those results. And why is it that only a small number of houses have received kits to be able to test the water? And if it wasn't for a whistleblower, we do not know how much lead is we were drinking and our kids have been drinking in public schools and in the parks. So for me, the number one biggest issue around our water infrastructure is being able to make sure that we do not turn into another Flint, right? We already know, as a teacher, we knew one of the biggest causes of delayed test scores was the lead poisoning in our kids' water. And we also know that there isn't any appetite in City Council right now to look at how we could resolve this issue because it costs money and because nobody's going to make any money out of it. So what I would do is ensure that we look at what happened with the test results to check the lead in our water pipes. I want to make sure that we actually get a clear-eyed assessment of what we're going to do to address that. And again, I think Pete, has a really good idea of thinking about how do we make the replacement of these water pipes a public works program for people. We need $100 million plus program to replace the water pipes and to make sure that our young people who need jobs get jobs, good jobs, to be able to do that.
Folks, climate change is here, right? And as the effects of climate change are exacerbated, Chicago is going to become a mega city by 2030 or 2040, according to Bloomberg. It's going to become a mega city because it's the one big city that's not on the coast and where we're going to be able to weather some of the changes that come from climate change a little better. We're also close to a lot of fresh water. We're essentially the Saudi Arabia of water. If Saudi Arabia is oil, we are of water. We need to get the water right. We need to get this water thing right. And we need to start by removing lead service lines. There's no mystery. 70% of homes test for lead, right? We know the results. Scientists have known that lead is bad for you for 75 years, right? The city of Chicago, they changed from lead to copper in 1986, right? They mandated lead until 1986. Now they want us to pay to remove our service lines. That's unacceptable. Regardless of who wins this election, I want to leave you with this. We can't stop fighting to remove lead service lines and replace them with copper. It's for our health, but even more importantly, we have levels of youth unemployment and unemployment of young men that are just too high on the south and west sides. We wonder why we have crime. It's because we have so much poverty and so much unemployment. We have the opportunity now to get $1.2 billion from the state of Illinois through the IEPA State Revolving Fund for water infrastructure. We have to seize this opportunity. We can raise taxes on the rich to pay for the interest on that loan, but we have to stimulate our economy. We have to make sure that people have money in their pockets to spend. We will reap the benefits with more returns in terms of sales taxes, We will reap the benefits with less crime. We have to replace lead service lines now. Chicago's future depends on it. Thank you.
So let's move to a hypothetical scenario. You receive a zoning permit for a new project. How do you ensure that that project is going to go through an environmental impact assessment? So you get the permit, the request for zoning. How are you going to go about reconciling that application and some of the money it might bring or the money it might take? How will you assess and address the environmental impact of these projects?
So for clarification, you're saying if there's industry that wants to come in and they've asked for a zoning permit, right? Again, for the people that came to my meeting on March 5th and want to be interested in looking at environmental impact and zoning, I will convene a group of neighbors who are very interested in looking at every zoning application that comes in and be able to ask questions around whether this is something that's good for the neighborhood or not. Two, currently the city's Department of Environment, well, there isn't a city Department of Environment right now. So the other thing that we need to do is we need to address the issue that the city currently does not have people to be able to assess whether the industry that comes in is going to actually cause us harm. So we have to go to the state, right? So I want to make sure that those individuals at the government level and the advocates that are here, like Neighbors for Environmental Justice and Ebejo, are at the table before we provide any type of approval for any of the industries here. Again, I go back to the original point. The goal of us should not be to make that chart more polluted. The goal for everything that comes into our district should be to make it less polluted and also to ensure that the people in the 12th district have a say of everything that happens within our community.
I would agree with Jose. The candidates in this race have to decide if they're going to be movement candidates or if they're going to be candidates that are in it for themselves. And I would agree, when it comes to these issues, Neighbors for Environmental Justice and Alvejo have to be at the table because I think, I don't want to speak for Jose, but I believe we're both movement candidates that will insist on that happening. The other thing I think we have to understand is, listen, aldermen have a lot of power in the city. And I think if you're going to be a full-time alderman, there's not so many projects that are ongoing that you can't keep tabs on the neighbors who are around those projects. You can't keep tabs on how those projects are progressing. And so if you have something like this guy who's going to make McKinley Park, Wicker Park, what's the address on that one on Pershing? When you see frayed asbestos, right? We have to be able to use our aldermanic prerogative to influence the city to be like, hey, it's time to stop construction for a while until we can get this dust under control, until you can start following code. And if we're afraid to use our aldermanic prerogative to benefit the respiratory health of our residents, we should be doing something else. We have to wield that aldermanic prerogative like a hammer, right? And make sure that Alvejo and Neighbors for Environmental Justice are guiding us along the way. Thank you.